What's going on, and welcome to a little afternoon, evening, morning, nighttime chat, depending where you are in the world. Cracking a beer, taking a breath, late night chat here, trying to get the camera situated. Let's talk some football. Let's drink a beer. Let's discuss life, opportunity, love, and respect, and letting some people file in the door here. Obviously, a brand new YouTube channel. A lot of people coming and going. And the life we live, Detroit Gator. What up, brother? My God, appreciate you, man. You're probably on the desk tonight, overnight here, going into Monday morning. I appreciate you every single day of the week, no matter what. Hope you're dominating every aspect of your life. Oh, yeah, baby. Oh, yeah. And gonna retweet this on Twitter, see if we can get some people in the chat, see what's going on here. If not, we'll have a personal conversation, and we'll see what's going on. As I said last week, it is the most obscure hour to have a conversation, but it's where I function. And you guys know me. You guys know I'm an entrepreneur. So my off nights are oftentimes these weeknights, if you will, for me, these Sunday nights where I hang out, I have a beer, and we talk about what's going on. So let me just retweet this real quick, and we will chat some sports. Glenn, what up, brother? My guy. Hope you're well, man. How's the cocktail situation going in that beautiful lab you have going on there, man? This is what I do when the gun is talking. So when I do my own videos, I have to do it myself. So just hold on a second, gentlemen. I appreciate you guys so much. We'll talk some sports here shortly. The beauty of entrepreneurial life, and it really is. And I love to do it for you guys, and I love to do it for myself, honestly. I hate to say that I'm doing it for you guys, because I'm not doing it for you guys. I'm doing it for myself and the beautiful conversation we have here indefinitely as we go forward in this life experience and what's going on. And Gator, you said it. I love it. I'm not going to lie. I love it. I think it's already at 7.5. Lions on Monday Night Football next week against the Raiders. No way around it. Beautiful spot. Beautiful spot, unequivocally. And, I haven't bet it yet, but I was just texting the gun. Let me pull up what I said to the gun. And this is preemptive week 8 material here. All right, this is what I said. I'll read this out loud because I think this is great content and this is great stuff. So, something that I didn't want to tell you guys before this week, and I'll tell you guys candidly right now, this week was Voodoo Weekend. And what that means is there's one weekend in football, and it's college and NFL, and it's interconnected. It happens every single year where it goes so far awry. It's chaotic. It's unpredictable. Numbers don't matter. Narratives don't matter. You are purely casino gambling. This was week 7 NFL and week 8 college football. And this is exactly where last year I actually lost my account, snapped at a burner. The whole thing went awry. And I'm telling you guys, it wasn't the calendar date, but it was the Voodoo Weekend. It's QB injuries. It's weird calls. It's turnovers in plus territory. It's cluster effect. It's the bizarreness of statistical clusters. We survived, and we really did survive. And I firmly believe that. So I said this to the gun earlier. And I don't think the gun even understood what I was saying. I don't mean that as a shot at the gun, because I love him so much. But Guns has his life. He has 2 kids. He works. He doesn't professionally gamble. He's not so internalized in this like I am. And I said to him, what I said, we fought through the Voodoo Weekend. I was nauseous all afternoon. I kid you guys not. Those of you guys who have listened to me for 3 or 4 years now, you guys know, 1, I take this so unbelievably personally in my endeavor. And 2, I'm so aware of human energy and statistical clusters. I know when it's coming. I know when the storm's coming. And if you guys notice, this was the first time in the entire season I had limited plays in college football. I knew it was coming. I could feel the storm. And it wasn't just that I was arbitrarily feeling a bad vibe. It was actually the statistical orientation that I was looking at with the way teams were playing and how books were getting chaotic environments in terms of what was going on when I capped this week, early week. And I said to the gun, we fought through Voodoo Weekend. I was nauseous all afternoon and yesterday. I knew we were in that sample. I cannot fucking believe the Rams did not cover that game. Fucking Rams kicker misses a field goal. Entire momentum flips. Another plus territory turnover for TJ Watt. Gunn said, it's absurd. TJ Watt, another pick in the opponent's plus territory. And I said, whatever. Let's talk further ball. And I said, next week, this is where we're going. And I'm dropping you guys top plays right now. Tennessee, New Orleans, Arizona, and Detroit. Top plays. And Gunn said to me, he said, oh, you were bored today? And I said, bro, I'm not bored. I said, I am hyper competitive and highly stressed. And when I'm in the cluster and when we're in the eye of the storm, which we were all weekend, college and NFL, all I know is to look into further data. And what I saw was Tennessee, New Orleans, Arizona, and Detroit. And for those of you guys who watched the broadcast last week on Sunday night, I said Cleveland would cover. I also said the Birds would cover. The previous week, I said the Jets would cover. This is why this chat is powerful. It's powerful for myself and our integrative conversation because this is the first take. This is the organic take. This is the read, the energy, the non-analytical take. Just what's supposed to happen. And being perfectly honest with you guys, I veered off of my general read a lot because numbers, statistics, Vegas algorithms tell you such an incredible story in sports. But I will say this in football, football is energy. It is competitive energy. And these plays that I've dropped on Sunday night, it's not that. It's not just this show and this whole little mini enterprise we're running here. This is what goes on in the mind of a person and the read of energy. And I'm telling you, this is what we should be betting every week. Like I actually say this to myself. Like, why are you not betting what you say on Sunday night? Because that's exactly what you should be betting. And like the gun is betting the things I say on Sunday. I love the gun. I'm not shading the gun, but Gun would say this. He actually hit me up. He said, I'm a shark disciple. And Guns knows that. I love him to death. He's my guy at the highest order. Guns knows I know what the fuck I'm talking about. And this is what's going on in professional football next week. And it's a big time spot. I'm going to crack a beer. I'm going to talk some sports, talk some energy, talk some life. And got the new setup here. And just cracking it now. So let's fucking cheers up, fears down. Let's chill. Let's discuss. Opening up the chat. Walker Bailey in the chat. As we just mentioned before, Glenn and the Gator in the house. Cracking one of the big dog beers. The only beer that I've been drinking recently. High Life. Pouring it into the can here. I've already had 2 of these, I will say. So we're buzzing it up. We're hanging out. So cheers to you guys. Big dog beers. Let's go. It's a big pour, boys. Let's fucking go. And for those of you guys who have not been following the Sunday night chats, we've been doing these chats. It's always one beer. This is 2, actually, in one glass. So cheers to us. I think this speaks to how much stress I've been undergoing the last 2 weeks. It's been a lot for me, I will say. It's been a lot of work, just integrating a lot of things in my life, transitioning a lot of things. But I will say I've been going through a lot of shit. So I'm just going to have a sip of beer. Cheers to you guys, and let's talk some fucking sports after I take a sip of this beer. Fucking delicious. Fucking delicious. Oh, what a fucking libation that is, man. You know, when you're running 2 different channels, 3 different channels, you're capping 3 different sports. You know, entrepreneurial life is a beautiful thing, but I will say it gets stressful sometimes, guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Cheers to you guys if you're drinking right now. If you're not, cheers to you when you are drinking, when you're hanging out, when you're enjoying, whenever you are. Cheers to you guys at all points in times. It's a beautiful, beautiful blessing. And let's talk a little more pro football here. Going to retweet this quickly on Twitter and jump off into a conversation. If you can really go through the card today, let's run down it. We ran through it less than 12 or 1 o'clock. So we ran through it 15 hours ago. But I will say this: this card was chaos. And when I recap the card, I am always trying to be so genuinely honest with you guys as to how I perceive the action of the card towards the result. It was just absurd. It was just absurd. Email makes a great comment. SoFi Stadium was a home game for the Steelers. Of course, the Steelers travel well always. But, when you look at the game, it's just another one of those outliers for the Steelers. The Rams outgained them. The Rams were in control. The Rams were up 10-3 at the half, 17-10 in the third quarter. That was after giving up a pick in their own territory and just a sequence of events to get them essentially off the grid to somehow another statistical anomaly cover for the Steelers. And you know what? That's fine. It's truly fine. It's truly fine. Because one of the beautiful things about NFL football is when we start tabulating this in week 1, and we will win, and we will take weekends like this where we lose. And that's the beauty of it. We're here for it, and we saw it happen, so we know what's going on. Now we can adjust, and now we know what's going on. And I speak to myself when I say this, and I speak to you guys as well. I come from a very inspirational, inspired sports betting background where I wasn't committed to the craft, where I would pop in and out on weekends, especially on Sundays, because I love football, but I didn't really follow. I followed the sport. I was a big fan, but I didn't follow the intricacies of handicapping the sports. I didn't really know what was going on. But I think the beautiful thing about what we're seeing here, even taking a small loss today, is we really have a deep tabulation as to precisely where certain teams are statistically and where they're supposed to move over the course of the rest of the season. And I was saying this earlier to somebody, not the gun. I was having a private conversation, but it's actually kind of crazy to think we're not even halfway through the season. I'm so immersed in it. I feel like we're like so layered deep in the war zone almost, but we're not even halfway through the season. And not only that, the playoffs. And we're already up 10 units, which is significant in NFL football over the first weeks. And we 2-unit losses in week 1, and we haven't run well. And I will say that we haven't like really heat checked the fucking board. If you guys follow all the plays, pretty much we win. When we lose, it's gross. And I've said this before about professional sports prognostication, and it continues to apply. When you're on the right side with us, usually the wins are pretty much you're on the right side, it goes your direction, and you win. We don't run well and backdoor wins very often. Like, that's not what we do. We do get backdoored and we do get statistically outliered when we lose, because that is how the public wins. And the public does win when they get lucky. And it is a really crucial point. Sharps win when data predicts something, and data predicts human action, and it comes to the expected point. People that win when they get lucky are usually fading statistical probability. They don't know what they're doing. They don't even know that's what they're doing. Like, if we were in a bar and I said, you guys are fading statistical probability, they'd be like, who are you? What are you talking about? The best thing about who I am as a person, I know that. I'd buy them 10 shots of Jameson before I said that, lubricate the situation, and we'd have a great conversation. They'd probably actually agree with me. You guys know how that goes politically and sports betting conversationally. Lubricate the family, the other side, all of a sudden they're listening. But they would agree because they don't really know what's going on. Like when you go to a bar, you hear these hot take guys talking about this and that. Give me this team because of 3 outtake random narrative points. They don't really have a handle on the game. They don't really know what's going on. They have a couple talking points that they can hold on to and become emotionally bloated and just rip somebody if they counteract them a little bit. So it's like just this whole interdynamic of the competitive takes of sports media and handicapping, but it's fascinating in my opinion. It really is fascinating when you interact with, and I think you guys probably do it more than I do because as a professional sports handicapper, I don't really have a lot of friends that are Joe Public or office friends or family friends or whatever. Like I have my guys, I talk to them, we have very intellectual remarks on the games, and we kind of just jump off that statistically. But I know you guys out in the world have a lot of friends that are hot taking games, making quick remarks, just handicapping games based on zero data, but more so emotion than just quickly saying, see, I told you so, blah, blah, blah. That's why books make money, because they want people to think illogically, small window, and to truly just make bets on flyer emotions. And it's a beautiful thing that we even have the ability to look at it from a more analytical perspective. So when we lose on a weekend, it's usually fucked up. And I will say that it's usually fucked up. I mean, take a sip of water on that, guys. And if you really go down that card today, the Steelers should not have won that game. I mean, yes, of course they made plays. Fine, let it be what it is. But those are not plays you can expect to continue to make when you're getting effectively dominated at the line of scrimmage and with the yardage gap. And it's just something you have to just keep fading. Ultimately, you have to keep fading. Unfortunately, next week, they are playing a home game against Jacksonville. I can't say I'm thrilled with buying Jacksonville at Pittsburgh. Jacksonville themselves are also a little too hot in the matchup. So I feel like the game is kind of capped on both sides, which is not what you want to buy. But I do think the Steelers have to give one up at some point in time. And another point on that, I just think there's a lot of teams outside of the division this year, particularly in the first 10 weeks, that are just so closely graded to each other. We've talked about this with Denver, Atlanta, New Orleans, Green Bay, a couple other teams, not off the top of my head, but teams are just very close right now. There's a lot of parity in the sport, and you just see it. It just is what it is. And, I don't know. I think there's just a tight window in the sport right now. And, speaking of a tight window in the sport, you look at the Bucs game against the Falcons, and I think that game kind of set the tone for the day. I'm not going to sit here and say the Bucs outplayed the Falcons. They did not outplay the Falcons. But, when you come down to the moments, this is how professional football does play out. You play 2 hours and 45 minutes. You get about 15 minutes. And I like to call it get down to the moment. What happened? Baker Mayfield threw a pick in the red zone. And I know people would say Desmond Ridder turned it over on the goal line. I get it, 100%. Neutralization to me. I'm not going to sit here and say it was unlucky, because clearly that was very lucky on their side. But when you get down to the final point in the game, Baker gives it up on the 10-yard line pick. Then he gets the ball back, gets a field goal, at which point you do feel a certain amount of momentum, particularly for a home team in the division in a revenge game from last year. And then they proceed to give up a 39-yard pass on the first play from scrimmage to a non-explosive quarterback, Desmond Ridder, which leads to a field goal to win the game 16-13. And this is just variance in tight window football. There's no way around it. It's just how games are going to play out, particularly in this campaign where there's not a lot of separation. When you see a 2.5 spread, you are really, really in a gamble zone. I mean, look ahead to next week. It's very similar. There's a lot of tight windows. We're going to be gambling, but I think we're on the right sides. And let me retweet this again. Just get some more people in the chat. And as I always say, love you guys so much, but there's definitely more people than 8 sitting on Twitter that want to shoot this shit with us. Cheers to you guys. And I will open up questions in a minute. Let me bring up next week. I want to be a little bit more future-centric as opposed to sitting here complaining about today. Or yesterday, I should say. It is Monday morning on the East Coast here. But But staying the course here. Anyway, please, guys, if you're in the chat, drop questions. I will interact with you immensely because I'm getting into my element here, and you guys know I tend to rant when I get in my element. Got a lot of conversation in this mind, but when we go forward to next week, this is where we come to the same general idea with a lot of these matchups where it's not so much that you're on the right side or you're not. It's mostly the idea that there's a lot of gamble in the matchup. And one of the things that I've talked about on the show with Guns Sunday morning on a continuous basis is just this idea that you want to statistically buy teams that are within this margin to come north in their frequency to cover, as opposed to be too hot and kind of stuck in the past going south. And, we continue to talk about this team, and I'll talk about it. The New Orleans Saints are on the road this week in week 8 at the Colts. And the line is pretty much a dead pick 'em right now. And I got to be honest with you guys. The Saints have really made a lot of mistakes in past weeks for us. We are 0-2 with betting them in the last 2 weeks, but this is just a classic environment where you have to stay the course. And there's a lot of people that do bet chase systems. I don't love chase systems. Chase systems don't usually apply to NFL football with a lack of games. They're mostly in hockey and baseball. But I do think, just generally speaking, applying a chase idea to the New Orleans Saints does make sense. And it sounds maybe behaviorally irresponsible to a degree, but I do think just in general, you could justify putting 2 units on the Saints. And if they don't cover again, putting 3 units on them the next week. One thing that I think is very, very important to note about all of these NFC South team, these opponents, I will say, they all play super soft schedules. They're all very, very downgraded in their out of division schedule, and they also play each other, which is inherently very, very soft. Gabby Cab in the house, what up, brother? Cheers to you, bro. You a dog. And I was trying to come on there last night, but you know me well enough. Sunday night's my night, bro. Cheers, bro. Saturday night's not my night. At some point, maybe it will be, but it's not right now. And but that all being said, with the Saints, we look at the Saints. The Saints are sitting here 1-5-1 ATS. 1-5-1 ATS. And their non-covers have all been so unbelievably egregious. Inopportunistic turnovers, 4 and outs, random drops, the other team getting lucky in small windows. This is the beauty of NFL football in terms of handicapping. It's not so much that you're betting the Saints versus the Colts. What you're actually betting is this underground statistical flow for both teams. If you actually can visualize what you're betting with teams, you're not betting the 2 teams on the field, ATS. You're literally betting their statistical flow in this graph that hovers beneath them. And what I mean by that is that it literally is the source of the handicapping of their energy. And that's where I say it hovers beneath them, because that's your source. It's not your on-field ability. It's actually the statistical flow of what your patterns suggest and how they're going to go in a different direction than what's been going on if it's outlierish. And that's what's going on with the Saints. The Saints purely are a buy team. There's no way around it. I was talking to the group chat about it 3 nights ago when they didn't cover the Thursday night game. And you guys saw the game. I mean, yes, they did get, sort of outclassed to a certain degree. They came back, they tied it, and they gave up a 50-yard fucking touchdown immediately. And they came back and they went 4 and out in the red zone. That's 2 straight games that went 4 and out in the red zone to not get to a tie point in the game. And they've been graded a pick 'em basically every single game this year. So the point is, they keep losing coin flips. And I will continue to say this because I want to normalize this idea of statistics within sports handicapping, not so much players on the field and the actual dynamics, because I know people love that. And trust me, I come from that background myself. But having seen this in detail 8 to 10 years in the making, I realize it's actually statistics. So the point is, we're not looking at these players and this team and the matchups and the whole fucking thing. We're looking at just statistical frequencies and patterns and expectancies in terms of a neutralized average. This team should cover 4 in a row. If you don't cover 4 straight coin flips, you should cover 4 in the other direction. And theoretically, you should want to bet this team every single week for the next 8 weeks because they're theoretically, you want to call it free money. That's free money. Free money statistically is when one team outliers themselves on the south side 4 to 7 weeks in a row. They're going to outlier themselves theoretically to get back to a normalized 50% point going forward. It's just math and statistics. And this is why the Saints are a great buy team. And this is also why you see in mainstream media, it's pretty much the polar opposite of what you actually want to bet. People just hyper sensationalize recent history and they say, I can't ever do that again. When theoretically, it's usually exactly what you should do the next week. The thing in sports betting that's so interesting is that you should pretty much, if you lose a bet, you should always evaluate, was it the wrong bet? Or was I just maybe slightly unlucky in the matchup and the articulation of the game on record? And really try to figure out, was I wrong or was the process wrong? If the process was wrong, adjust. But if the result just kind of outliered you a little bit, stay the course of action, stay the course with the process. So I think it's very important to note that, just generally speaking. And I think that speaks directly to the New Orleans Saints. I really do. And Guns and I were talking about this off the record, but we wanted the Colts to play a representative game this Sunday, obviously Monday morning here, but this Sunday against Cleveland. We thought Cleveland would play down slightly, and we wanted the Colts to play up because we wanted them to be off of a big high, where next week you get the Saints off this sustained low and the Colts potentially fatigued off just this over competition. And something that I've detailed over the last 4 or 5 years in NBA, this idea of a demoralizing loss, not a blowout loss. When you lose a tight game and you come back the next week, oftentimes it's harder to get up again. And people think oftentimes antithetically to that from the standpoint that, oh, they were competitive, they'll come back competitive. It's not that. They used all their energy in that matchup. They don't have anything left. You actually want to back teams more so off of a blowout loss because they didn't put a ton of energy into that matchup and they actually have a lot coming back, combined with the fact that they are just insulted by themselves and they're going to play better. So it's just a great point, regardless of the situation, psychologically. Buy teams off blowout losses, fade teams off demoralizing losses. And I do think it is slightly antithetical as to what people conventionally think. But regardless, it is what it is. And let's see what's going on in the chat. Rolling off, son. What up, brother? Vegas hitting licks in 1 p.m. games. Dan, what up, brother? My guy. Yeah, they got smoked. And, I made the comment. I didn't realize that they were starting Brian Hoyer today. When did that go down? At what point did O'Connell get benched? Is this just McDaniels having no idea what's going on? No, the Rams are not a fade team. Next week is a tough ask on the road at Dallas. They'll have their spots. They made a couple mistakes today. That was it. Honestly, I don't. Going back to the point about the Raiders, I did not get the memo that Aiden O'Connell was not starting today. So when I saw Brian Hoyer on the field, I was very surprised. And I do think to myself, is this just McDaniels yet again being so unoriginal in his thought as a Belichick disciple, where he's continuously getting these opportunities outside of the Patriots franchise to be a head coach, but he's not the guy because he doesn't think organically or clearly otherwise. And it kind of blows my mind. But regardless of that, it was just an absolute blowout loss. But I mean, when you put Brian Hoyer on the field, what do you expect? When we capped the game, it wasn't official or anything, but I said I thought that Aiden O'Connell would have a psychological point in Chicago. He played at Purdue. He grew up in Chicago, local, Long Grove, Illinois, I believe. How does Josh McDaniel miss that? Your quarterback is from the area. Put him on the freaking field. Are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? It's just ridiculous. Just unbelievable lack of psychological awareness. You know, Jimmy G's out. So what? Like, put your guy in who's from the area. I mean, and I'm speaking just on the record here. We thought he was going to play. That was our comment in the game. And when I saw Hoyer in there, I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked, honestly. And I thought it was just a complete miss. Just absolutely just shocking miss. And Emal, I agree. They should trade Devontae. But, you know, at the same point, it's like one of those things where it's like, these are the bad marriages of pro sports. You know, you sign a guy, he signs with you, some moving parts, and it's just a disaster. You know, he wanted to come over here from Fresno State to play with Derek Carr. You probably know that. I'm not stating something you don't know, but I'm saying for the viewers. Devontae Adams came over from the Packers because Derek Carr went to college with him at Fresno State. Obviously, he's no longer with the franchise, so now he's stuck here with McDaniels and, you know, Jimmy Garoppolo who's hurt and this backup quarterback carousel. So I completely agree, but I mean the point is, like, you know, one of the things, Emal, that I noticed over the years is that trading market in professional football is very low, particularly for receivers that are 30 years old or around there. It always sounds so good because we all perceive them to be fantasy superstars and winners, and the mainstream media sensationalizes receivers and running backs. But truthfully, there's not a lot of value in the open market for these guys. So it's one of those things where, like, these teams just don't trade them because they're just like, well, we're not going to get a lot back. Might as well put them on the field and see what's going on. And it's just one of those things, ultimately. Glenn says, was that the Saints game? Oh, without question. I mean, they had so many chances to win the game, 100%. Rolling up, son. Cheers, brother. Appreciate you, man. No, I don't think so. You know, Emal, it kind of reminds me of when the Patriots traded Randy Moss to after they got Randy Moss from the Raiders, and then later on they traded him to the Titans. They got like a second rounder, and I think that, you know, this is kind of how these things go. You trade a receiver at this point in his career, you get like a second or third rounder, and that's it. And I think it's, again, and when I make these comments, it reflects it on me in terms of my own perspective as to how I was brought up in terms of thinking by fantasy football and the mainstream media lecturing me every single day of my life until I took a step out for a second. But I think that we all naturally overvalue these skill positions as to how to win games. The core guys are the ones that win games. It's the linemen. It's the push and the pull of the force of the center of the field. And I never understood it until about 6 or 7 years ago when I really started to think about these things in more serious detail. I was like, you're right. Like, these guys can't even run their routes unless the offensive line blocks to have enough time and the quarterback can sit in the pocket and throw the ball. And it's just this wildness of our own perception that we hyper-sensationalize position players because the media trains us to sensationalize position players. Most of winning in football is actually D-line and O-line and just a physical competition, this push factor. That's all it is. It's very basic. It's just this squat push factor and agility in a small window of some of the biggest gladiator guys on the planet. That's really all it is. That's how you win in football. And I learned that about 7 or 8 years ago, and it changed my perspective on the game in terms of how we always talk about these, you know, these sexy receivers, these running backs, whatever. And it's like, no, get your line centered. That's how you win. And Sing D 13, what up, brother? Oregon -5.5 at Utah. Haven't looked at that one, actually. Have not looked at that yet. Love the Saints. Absolutely love the Saints. I'm on the Saints and the Titans. Have not placed it yet, but I will be placing this within the next 24 hours. Just came on here very, very loosely just to discuss. Saints top, Titans. Titans are just a great statistical buy as well. We're right there. Glenn message retracted. Not sure what's going on there, brother. Rolling up, son. Salute. Cheers up to you guys. Big dogs in the chat. Delicious beer. Love this beer. Oh, Walker, what's going on with the Titans? Type that in the chat. Okay, I'll be looking at that. Have not placed it yet. So I appreciate that intel. That is obviously great. Appreciate you, man. Always. Even so, and again, I'm not sanctioning the play with the backup quarterback, this and that, but just conversationally speaking, it's just a terrible spot for the Falcons. Falcons at 4-3, basically getting 4 tight window wins. Not what you want to back at all. Okay. Who played in the last game for the Titans? Who was playing? Who was it? Malik? Is Malik Willis still on the team? Who's playing for the Titans right now? Cindy says Chargers should bounce back next week. Who do the Chargers have next week? Let me pull it up here. Against the Bears. Yeah, I don't. That's a tough ask from the standpoint that covering a 10-point spread in the NFL is a big ask outside of the division. Real big ask outside of the division. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about that game. You know, one of the things that I really dislike laying big digits outside of the division. We laid it today with the Seahawks in the division very specifically, and I think that was again specific to the division. These random games, like I hate to call them random games because they are, of course, NFL Sunday games, but they take on a certain level of randomness to them when the teams have such a lack of matchup data and historical rivalry aspect. Like when you look at the Chargers and the Bears on Sunday night, like it's such an unbelievably loose game to handicap from any sort of matchup perspective. I don't disagree they need a bounce back, but I just think in general it's just hard to figure out the game because one of the things about I said basketball. I'm getting into basketball. One of the things about football is that there's just not so much of this idea that a team is going to let down by default because they get 6 days off between every game outside of loose travel spots. So it's like the travel. I don't. It's just there's just so many different elements that make it difficult from that standpoint. Like it's just not that transparent. If you will allow it to be that ultimately. Couple more games I want to discuss here as we go into week 8. Couple games that I like and games that I think are very interesting. I'm going to take a sip here and appreciate you guys. 19 you guys in the chat. Going to retweet this now. See if anybody else wants to come in here and shoot the shit. Drop your comments in the chat, and I will interact with anybody who's given insightful comments. I appreciate insightful comments always. Mark A says, will Bills bounce back next week? Here's the thing about the Bills. I've seen this now for 3 years with Josh Allen in this group, and they just continue to blow my mind. I will say, blow my mind. They just do not motivate against non-competitive teams. It doesn't matter if they lost the previous week. They just don't compete. And I think this week was a perfect example of it. But this was not the first time they've ever done it. They've been doing this now for 3 years. If the team name is not the Chiefs, the Eagles, the playoffs, or the Ravens or somebody like that, they just don't show up. And it's kind of this weird diva attitude they have about them. And it's kind of crazy to say. Josh Allen out of Wyoming. You got Stephon Diggs, kid out of fucking, Maryland, coming over here just grinding his ass off, but they're divas. They are. And they just don't perform week to week. And so the point is, even though they just lost to the Patriots, and even though they played like complete shit against the Giants in a backup quarterback situation, and even though they also played terrible in London and lost to the Jags, so theoretically 3 straight bad weeks, this is still the Bucks on a short week. So if you want to allow this psychological model to just be what they always do, you know what? The Bucks are also off of a loss themselves, and the Bills don't motivate in these spots. So it's like I don't think it's a great spot for the Bills. I think the Bills are going to play some halfway football, and I think the Bucks are going to scrap it up a little bit. If you guys remember, I believe, just this is of course off the top of my head in these beautiful free flow chats here on Monday morning. But if you remember this, the last time the Bucks were a significant underdog outside of the division on the road was week 1, plus 5.5 at the Vikings. They won the game outright, 20-17. You know, I hate to say it, but I think this is actually not necessarily a bad spot for the Bills, but maybe it is a bad spot for the Bills. And it's kind of one of those weird things with the Bills where I just feel like they just coast. They just always coast. And the Bucks are going to show up here with some sort of competitive angle on Thursday Night Football. And I think, you know, one of the points that outside of the narrative points that we're talking about here, numerical points, you know, when you see a game where Buffalo is laying 7.5 points here outside of the division to an opponent they have literally no matchup data against historically, particularly with this quarterback in this situation, the game takes on a very loose capping environment. But when you see a total at 42.5, so you're looking at a 7.5 spread on a 42.5, in professional football, it's actually very difficult to cover over a touchdown when the total is under 42 points. It speaks to the other offense doing nothing. And I don't think that Buffalo, on a short week off a loss at New England and this cluster of games where they're clearly fatigued and underperforming, are going to somehow turn up against a random team like Tampa Bay. So I think that the fact that total is very low speaks to the fact that there's actually a tightness to the game. And I think that, to be honest with you guys, I don't buy into this idea, but I do think it's at least reasonable in terms of a narrative here. I think books to a certain degree are baiting people to lay 7.5 because that's such a horrendous number and just expecting a bounce back for Buffalo, better team, big time quarterback, big time roster, playoff game, or excuse me, playoff caliber team, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's still a trap spot, honestly. I think it's just a shit spot, honestly. Yeah, and the Bills will continue to do it. That's the thing. If you guys actually go back to last year, this is very, very interesting stuff. If you go back to last year, the Bills did not cover 5 consecutive ball games in the middle of the season. If you guys remember, they actually had a game, I believe it was actually it was a home game that was transferred to Detroit because of a snowstorm in Buffalo, and they had to play some bullshit team on the road. They played Cleveland on the road at Ford Field, but it was a displaced game. They were supposed to play a home game. They didn't cover 28-25. Then they had to play the Lions in Ford Field the next week. So they played 2 consecutive games at Ford Field. They didn't cover either of them, but the point is they didn't cover 5 straight games. And this is the contemporary Buffalo Bills. They are very, very willing to not cover football games. And I think to a certain degree, Josh Allen is confused. And I will say that. I think he's confused. Because I think he's very caught in this cross-section of being so talented and so hyper-aggressive, which he is extremely skilled at. But here's the point. He's made a lot of mistakes being his natural self. And I think now he's kind of caught in between a little bit. And I will say this, as a statistical analyst and an ex-poker player and a handicapper of sports, one of the worst environments to be in is when you're caught in between strategies. When you're too aggressive and you're too soft, at least you know who you are. When you're not too aggressive, but you're not too soft, but you're trying to middle both points, that's actually your worst point of execution. I think that's exactly where the Bills are right now with Josh Allen. I think he's trying to be slightly more responsible with the ball, but I think it's taking him off his actual natural aggression point. I think the coaching staff is in his ear. I think he's all over the place mentally. I think it's screwing him up, if we're being super honest here. So I think that the moral of the story is here. I think if you can get the Bucs at over 7 on a plus, you're probably on the right side of the game. Emal says the media hypes up Josh Allen too much. They want him to second face him home. Completely agree, without question. And I've watched Josh Allen. You guys remember this last year? I was saying that I love the game and I love his shit. I got a fucking hat, the whole fucking thing. But what I've seen from him is just this hyper aggression. And then I do think but again, the crucial point is now I think he's overreacting a little bit to the hyper aggression, which is why they're so tentative in so many moments. The coach is missing this. Mike McDermott is not a psychological guy. I can just tell he's not a big dog. He's not a leader. He's more of a statistical guy. He's kind of a grinder on the defensive side of the ball. He's underspoken. He's just not the guy for the group. He's just not the guy for the group. And I think they have the wrong coach. And here's the thing about the coach. Like, this is the thing about pro football and pro basketball. It's not so much he's a bad coach. It's just not the right coach. Josh Allen needs a coach like – actually, I don't know who he needs, but he's not the right coach. Not the right coach. He's too underspoken. He's too tentative. Josh is caught in between now. He's caught in between. He's overthinking everything. And I think it's pretty wild to see Josh go down that route where you can just see he's overthinking everything. Walker in the house. Game 7. I got nothing on it, bro. Love you for it, but bless your fandom, man. Texans -3, great look Sunday. Here's the thing. I looked at that as well. I don't disagree with you. I do not disagree with you. The one thing that holds me back to a certain degree is the fact that the Panthers are 0-6 and they're 0-5-1 ATS. This is the same point that I was making with a couple other commentary points going back 15, 20 minutes. With handicapping NFL football, you want to look statistically. And when a team is running basically an anti-sheet, 0% ATS, you have to think to yourself, they're going to cover 1 at least. And here's the point. If they're going to cover 1, it should be theoretically as a home dog outside of the division where the other team doesn't have a ton of matchup analysis or motivation, and the other team's off a bye, and with a rookie quarterback on the road as a favorite. I'm not saying I like Carolina here. I'm telling you, I have massive hesitation to Houston here. I think that when you look at this environment, if there's ever a game that Carolina might win or cover, it's this. Not only that, psychologically, Bryce Young has been very mediocre. He's going to find some sort of emotional capacity to compete against CJ Stroud. There's a lot of points here for Carolina, and I think there's just a lot of weirdness to that game. Not only that, but Houston's been very good at home against the spread outside of the division. Saying, my guy, I appreciate you. If you look at Houston, they've been good at home outside of the division. They haven't really had a lot of these spots on the road outside of the division, also as a favorite. And when they get in that environment, I think it takes on a vastly different capacity. I can't say I love backing the 0-6 Panthers, but I do think this is a stinky, stinky spot, honestly. Yeah, I think this is a real stinky spot. I think this is one of those spots where it's one of those spots. It's one of those spots. It's just not a good spot. So I would not advise you guys to put your money on that. And of course, we always say it could win, but just over the large sample, not the spots you really want to be on ultimately. Couple other spots here. Looking at significantly, actually, have not placed a wager on this particular one, but looking significantly at the Cardinals at +8 this week. And if you look at the Ravens, this is probably the worst spot on the entire Ravens calendar. The Ravens have been all over the globe, all over the globe. I mean, granted, they haven't been in Dubai, they haven't been in Ibiza, they haven't been partying. Maybe they've been partying, but they've been all over the place. They played a road game in Pittsburgh, then they went to London, then they come back to Baltimore. Huge win against Detroit. Now they got to go to Arizona and play a random game and come back for a homestand. I talked about this last year, the year before, and the year before. Some of the best fade spots in the sport are not about the teams, they're about the situations and the travel. Baltimore is in the worst calendar spot of their entire schedule in terms of travel, and they're laying over a touchdown. And what it comes down to here is not so much the fact that they're a better team or this or that. It's the fact that there's fatigue, legitimate fatigue. And I think that you're looking at a Cardinal spot here when you guys look at it at +8 right now. And yeah, Cardinals have played well in the first half. They have played well in the first half. I do think that that might be a little bit fade worthy. People like to attach to trends, and trends oftentimes are not necessarily sustainable. I do think that, when you look at, for example, Desmond Ridder had not covered a first half in his career until this week, and he did, and people were saying, fade him, he's 0-10, boom, he covers. So it's not, you don't necessarily want to attach to trends, particularly in NFL football, because NFL football is so volatile in the small window. I think there's always a certain aspect point to always pulling out to the big window because it's just so variant in the small window. I don't disagree, of course. It is regular in the sample, but I just think that, you want to define the trend for yourself before the trend develops, and then you're late to the party. And I think that oftentimes what you want to find is you want to find something that a team is so terrible in an environment and say, wow, they're really bad. Will they go the other direction? You always want to be ahead of the movement, not behind the movement. I think it's a very, very key point with statistics in general. It's sports betting, it's politics, it's poker, it's real estate forecasting, it's whatever. You don't necessarily want to buy the trend because usually the trend is a little too late. And people are going to sell you the trend because they're not necessarily forecasting the actual evaluation of what's going on the graph. They're just reporting what's been happening in recent history. More often than not, because of the way the law of averages exist within themselves, the trend is going the other direction. So you have to understand that. Like when you see a trend, your first thought should be fade, actually. And it's never shade. It's just pure, utter analysis. But just to give you guys a little insight, when you see a trend, first thought should be fade the trend, not buy the trend, and try to figure out what's going on with that. And Off the Grid Sports, what's up, brother? NBA time, let's crush it. No doubt, brother. We're on here Tuesday afternoon. I'm trying to figure out the time with Junior. I think we're going to be on here at noon or 2 o'clock for the opener. Big time stuff. You guys want to bet the game right now? I'll put the hat on. The buy hat is engaged. Let's fucking go. Let's go. Let's fucking go. And gonna wrap it up on that, guys. I'm losing my voice. Want to have a beer here, just listen to some music and wind down. We'll be on here Tuesday with Junior. We'll be on there 3 days a week with Bet US. Got another couple things coming up, guys. I love you guys so much. Give you guys all the big time vibes. Get a workout in tomorrow. My favorite Monday. Mondays are for momentum. Get that workout in. It will make you feel so much fucking better. I love you guys so much. Cheers to you guys. Let's fucking go. Signing out now. See you guys tomorrow.